Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Flexi webinar. My name is Bennett. I'll be the moderator for today. Our presenter is Aaron Clapp. He's our application specialist at SAI. He knows everything there is to know about Flexi, and today he'll be walking us through some of the several new improvements to the contour cutting workflow. After the presentation, we'll be able to answer any questions you have either about contour cutting or any other Flexi topic, so feel free to put those questions in the chat and we'll answer as many as we can. We're recording the webinar as always, so if you want to review anything Aaron discusses or share it with someone else, we'll be sending you all the link here this afternoon, so be on the lookout for that in your email inboxes. And with that, I think we're ready to get started, so I'll turn the presentation over to Aaron.
All right, so we've got quite a few little new things here that we're going to be talking about today. It may seem like we're going to be jumping around a little bit, but there's a lot of different things here that we've improved for the contour cutting or just the cutting workflow here and there, and we wanted to kind of just gather all those together in one specific episode where we talk about kind of all of them together for 21. The first one that we want to talk about is going to be output size compensation. Output size compensation is in the production manager. Some of you might have used it, and some of you may not have used it, so you may or may not be familiar with it. I'm going to briefly kind of go over what it does. So the output size compensation basically allows you to measure and adjust for slight variations in output size and kind of compensate for those. One of the typical type of symptoms that you might see is as the job goes longer and longer. So let's just say you have 28 rows of decals. As the job gets further along, maybe the cut gets slightly off as it goes along or something like that. And there's all kinds of things that can cause that to happen. It could be cutter related, it could be even material related. So, the different thicknesses of material can cause some of that. There could be a calibration problem there. There's several things it could be. Or maybe you just, for that particular media, you need to shift over the cut just a little bit. So the way that you do that is you can go into your cutter in Production Manager and click on here and go to Output Size Compensation. And basically what this does is you set in a test size. So in this case, the default is 12 by 12. You hit Test Cut. And then what you do is you measure the size. Now you can see here I've put something a little bit different, but by default it'd be set to 12 and 12. You test cut, you measure it as accurately as you physically possibly can, and then it comes up with a compensation value that the software will then use in order to adjust the compensation for that cut. And then we can enable it here. So fairly easy. And again, in the past, it's always been, you always had to set your output size compensation separately for each device, and it kind of had to be it was kind of like a one for all. So every material, every setting would always get changed by this. So if it was a thing where you would only get it during using one material, you might have to always come back in here and turn this on and off. So the improvement for 21, of course, is now you have the option to set the output size compensation separately for each media and save it as part of a preset. So it's not really shown here right now, but let's hit OK. Okay, and that is fine. We know that it's not going to affect jobs that are already in the queue. So what I'm going to do is let's do it for our graph tech here, make sure we're in the right spot. And let's just put in, I had put in a value of 11.5. Let's just hit OK. We're going to enable it. We know that. And now let's go to default job properties. Let's save a preset. So now if we save a preset, I'm just going to say hit OK here. And this is going to be our 11-5 compensation. We'll just say comp, that's fine. And we'll hit OK. Now if we go back into our output size compensation, a new option now appears here. I can check this option and it'll save it inside of the preset. So if I change presets, my output size compensation will change with it. And then if I had multiple presets, I could set each preset with their own output size compensation. So this is something that's really nice in case you have to use, or in case different compensations are required for different materials. So a little bit of an improvement here for those that use compensation, output size compensation for their cutter, and this is helpful for them. Now they can do it on a kind of an individual level for each material that they use it for. Okay, so that is the new output size compensation. Another thing that we've added inside of Flexi is going to be manual contour cut offset. Now, some machines already have this option enabled. So let's go ahead and take a look at Flexi here. We'll just draw something on screen with a contour cut so we can kind of see what this looks like. Apply, and we'll go into our rip and print. This would also be available for contour, for regular cutting as regular cutting as well, but it's mostly going to have an effect when you're printing and cutting. So let's switch our cutter to the GraphTech here. That is okay, and we have our GraphTech Type 4 marks. If we click on Edit to edit our settings down here for our cut, we've got several different options in here. And by default, if I chose any of the plotter conditions, this offset X and offset Y was always included in the GraphTech. So there were certain cutters that Flexi would allow, or Flexi had the ability to change the offset in the X and Y in case maybe, say, the cut was off left or right in other ways. So in this particular case now, what we've done is we've added that to more cutters. So a perfect example here, I added a Titan 28. This is a cutter that did not have these options in the past. So now if I double click on these, or I click Edit, now the offset and offset Y, X and Y are there. It used to be that these two boxes were not there. It was just a tools, pressure, and speed. So now we've added the offset X and the offset Y to all the cutters that didn't have them before. So you can have these in there in case something is off with your cut or something like that. You can just shift it over and allow it an adjustment on this side. Now, if you're having consistent problems with cuts being consistently off all the time and by a significant amount, you may want to consider, checking into your cutter and see if maybe doing a calibration first. But at least you have the option now to do it right within the software if you wanted to do that. So that's a nice addition there to cutting. So if you're using a cutter that didn't have those before, now they should be available. Okay, so another one is going to be contour cut previews in Production Manager. And this one might not be, if you use a workflow where you import jobs into Production Manager, it might be nice to see what that cut looks like. And so if I open up Production Manager, I'm going to grab my Muto here, and I'm just going to add a job to it that has a contour cut. I already saved this ahead of time. If I can remember what I called it. Here we go. So this is just a bunch of curved shapes with a contour cut on it. And we'll finish loading here. Not only does it show me the contour cut in the gray here inside of this preview, I can also now isolate that in the Production Manager here. So now I can just click on Contour Cut Preview, and it'll show me just the contour cut. So now I can just look at the contour cut to verify that it's correct, which could be something where you just want to not see the graphic, you just want to see where the layout of the cuts are. This is a new option inside of Flexi 21. So allowing to see your contour cut preview without having to see the graphics is another one of those little things, that little quality of life things that we added to the Production Manager in order to get you a little bit better view here. So along in this line of thought, let's talk about custom contour cut lines and colors. Now, we will go in a little bit more detail on this on a workflow Wednesday. So if you want to check that out, join us. I believe that goes out tomorrow. So check that out. But contour cut colors is something now that we can do. Custom contour cut colors. So what this allows you to do is this allows you to import custom contour cut colors that you've defined in another application. So in the base version of Flexi, if we go into our contour cut, we've typically always used these colors right here. Cut contour 1, 2, 3, and perf cut. These are industry standards for the most part. They're widely known as these are recognized by any software. Any RIP, any printing software is going to see these colors and they'll know right away what they are. They're contour cuts. So what this does is this adds the ability for you to add any other custom spot color. So let's say you don't particularly like that gray and you'd rather it be called something else. Well, now you can go into your default job properties and we can add custom spot colors right here. So I can set a line color. So you can see here that I've already created a default one. It's a spot pink color, and I just called it bright pink. And anytime a job that comes in with that particular spot color, it's going to apply a certain set of cut parameters to that. Really simple. I can just click set cut color. I give the spot color name. So one thing you will have to be aware of, it has to be a spot color. So I give it a spot color and name. I choose the options that I want for that particular cut color. And then I can change the display. Again, this is for display only, but this allows me to kind of see it in here in relationship to what it is. So I can edit that and choose whatever color I want to represent that. So I can have it be gray and then represent it as pink just to kind of make it easier to see or whatever. So I can do that now. And so when I import these PDFs or EPS files from, say, another customer, or if I have a designer that prefers to use different spot color names, I can easily adapt to that right inside of the production manager so that when jobs are imported in to the production manager directly, it will recognize those contour cut colors. Another improvement to the production manager in regards to contour cutting and cutting in general is if you've ever used, for example, the new GraphTech. Actually, you know what? Let's wait on that one for a second because we want to just briefly talk about the two new marks that are available in Flexi 21. Now, we did go over this a little bit in one of our previous episodes where we talked about the new GraphTech barcode marks. So those GraphTech barcode marks are found by going into your rip and print, choosing your GraphTech, and then going into options. And now you have all these options for the barcodes. So this is another improvement that's gone into cutting. So you can do all the barcodes that you want for this. There's a lot more adjustment that can be made here. So you can do a lot more with that. We've also added in support for the new Summa marks. So if you're running an HP latex cutter, or if you have one of the Summa cutters that supports the barcode, we now have the option for the Opus Extra mark. Now the Opus Extra mark is an addition to the Opus XY2. This was the previous one that we had, and I believe that, let's make some copies here. Let's make 30 copies. Actually, let's go with more. Let's go 50. And if we go with the standard marks, you can kind of see how it's just a standard set of 4 marks, one in each corner. If I adjust this to include the Opus Extra mark, now what that does is it adds the new bar that goes across. So you got extra marks in between, and then you have a bar that goes across. So if you're using that for the new HPs, HP cutters, or the new Summa cutters, then you're going to have that new option in case you want to use the functionality of the new Opus Extra mark. So I would check with HP and Summa for kind of the benefits and worst case scenarios for those marks, but now you have those options available. Now, talking about contour cutting and these two specific models in general. So one of the things that we've added now is the ability to keep the contour cut in the queue after you sent it. So one of the common problems that we always had with, or that we've had with the barcode type setups, is that the barcode would automatically generate a unique barcode number that was printed with the job. And then what would happen is, let's say, I don't know, something happens, you go to send your job, and maybe you didn't put it in right, or it's crooked, or something happened and it didn't read it right. Well, the job would just by default disappear right out of Production Manager unless you had specifically gone into the default job properties and you had told it to hold after you sent the job. Well, this way, what happens is, irregardless of whether you send the job or not, or the job goes through correctly, now it's going to save the job in the queue. So the job no longer disappears. The benefit here is that if you're using one of these cutters, it's not going to that job that has a very, very unique barcode number associated to it is not going to disappear. And that's was kind of one of the difficult things, was that if you didn't have that set properly, it would disappear, and then you try and resend the cut job again, and it might not always have the same number attached to it. So this way, those jobs, whether you're using the Graphic barcode or you're using the Summa or the HP barcode, that cut job no longer just disappears. It will stay in the queue, or it can be set to stay in the queue so that it doesn't just disappear on you, and then you're left without a job in the Production Manager for the cutter to reference. So that's going to be another nice quality of life improvement that we've made to Flexi and to Production Manager, to make sure that those jobs stay in there so you don't accidentally lose them as it pulls and tries to run that job. Another one is going to be, again, related to kind of contour cutting as well, but adding an artboard cutting option in the Production Manager. So what I'm going to do here is, to demonstrate this, is I'm going to take this, we'll delete that job, and we're going to import some TIFF files from our samples folder here. So let's go to our Flexi samples. We'll just grab some TIFF files, and it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to grab all of these except for that one. And we're just going to say preview. Yep, we'll just say add. Okay, so one of the things that this is going to allow us to do now is we can either import these all at once, or if we double click on these, we can cut a long page border. So now we can add new page borders to this cut. So this particular file does not have a contour cut associated at all. But if I choose this option, all of a sudden now the contour cut or the registration marks show up, and now I can start doing a contour cut. Essentially what it does is it takes the border of the object and creates that as its contour cut. So now I can define that individually by going into my tiling. And in this case, if I look at it, if I were to zoom in, let's look at that first. The blue line is right where it's going to cut, and it's going to cut right along the edge. So if I wanted to change that, I could go into my tiling tab and change my overall spacing to maybe, I don't know, let's try 0.125. Back in here, that gives us a little bit of extra panel space. And so now it's going to cut on this line here. So now you have the option to do this with multiple files, or with any TIFF or bitmap or JPEG or any file that you bring in that doesn't inherently have a contour cut. So for example, we could grab all these and nest them together. If we go to the default job properties for that file, I can say cut along the border. And if I go back into my layout, and what I can do now is check out the contour cut for each one of these. And so now I can see that each one of these is going to get contour cut. I got a little bit of a contour cut around each one of these files. And so this is a nice little feature if you're just simply importing a large amount of bitmaps, and all you just want to do is have it just cut around a box around the area that it cuts, just so it's just cut out. It doesn't have to necessarily be anything great. Just a simple thing where we're importing a bitmap, we're applying a contour cut to the edge of it, and then we're sending it out. So this could be something that could be pretty useful if you're importing a lot of type of images that are like this, that are square or rectangular in shape, that need a contour cut, but you don't want to have to import them in, apply a contour cut, send them over to Production Manager, and then send that way. That's just one extra step. This allows you to cut that step out. You import all of them at once. You apply a basic contour cut to it all at once, and then you're set. So that's another improvement there, an adjustment that we've added to the contour cutting as well. So that kind of goes over all. There's some other smaller stuff here and things, and we've done with the software. These are the big things that we've done in terms of cutting and contour cutting to help improve the Flexi workflow. Hopefully some of these will help you out. Again, we're always trying to make sure that we're updating and making sure we're improving the cutting workflow as well. And so hopefully some of these things will help in terms of your print cut workflow when you're printing and doing jobs. Is there any other questions that we have about this, or about contour cutting, or just plain cutting in general?
Questions while you were presenting. Erica, when you were talking about output compensation, asked, if you have a 12-foot job, would you need to waste 12 foot of material first in order to measure that?
No, this actually works as it scales it up for you. So in this particular case, you would just still do a small job. That's why it's set to 12 by 12 inches. Because if it's off at 12 feet, it should be still off a little bit at 12 inches. So it's not going to be near as much, and that's why we say measure it as accurate as possible to do that. Now, if the problem doesn't show up until then, there might be something else going on there, or you might need to maybe cut it maybe at, say, I don't know, 24 inches or something like that. That's why you can adjust that value there. But typically we've found that if the compensation needs to be used, typically you'll see the problem manifested even on smaller cuts. And in that case, you would be able to, it's just going to be a smaller number, but the software knows to kind of exponentially grow that number or adjust for larger jobs as well. And so even though it's a small cut, it should, or it will, create the correct output even for bigger jobs. Because yeah, that would be a big waste of material if you had like 12 feet that you had to do that with. So, but yeah, so typically we say start small and then go from there.
And then Joseph was asking about weed lines and contour cutting. I believe he's wanting to know how to add them in Flexi, how to add weed lines.
If you want to add weed lines in Flexi, that can be done. Let's just take this object here and let's just get rid of the contour cut. Actually, let's just go and just type up some text here. Oh, that's really small. And if we go to our cut section here, I can set my weed lines in here. If you're doing a just a regular cut, so I can do a weed border, which goes all the way around. I can do horizontal or vertical weed lines this way. And then I can also do vertical split lines. So vertical split lines go in between the letters, and horizontal lines, of course, also go in between the letters this way. So I can add them this way. I will have to say that and then of course, if you have a contour cut, you do have some similar options. They're not as complex as or as thorough as those options for just cutting, but you do have weed border and some other options in here for setting weeding and whatnot. But typically in your print and cut, it's not as big of a deal. But you still have options for creating weed borders and things like that in here.
Just got another question from Carl. When I print and cut a circle, the contour cut doesn't close all the way sometimes. Do you have an easy fix for that?
Yeah, in fact, there's an option right here. It's inside of the cut option and inside of the rip and print. So either one, it's this overcut option right here. So extra cut length. So for example, if we zoom into, just zoom into this 2 right here. Let's just say that our contour cut, let's say it starts here and it cuts all the way around and then ends back here. Well, sometimes it, like you say, it doesn't always complete it, and that could be a variety of things going on there. But we can add an extra cut length to it. So basically, this is like an overlap. So you can tell it how much more you want it to cut based on the gap that you're seeing. So basically, if it starts right here, it might end up here. So you can just give it a little extra room so that it basically goes over that area a little bit more to cover those discrepancies there.
Rhonda just sent in a question. Can you explain about the cutting when there is more color in a job?
Specifically, are you referring to like jobs that have actual like different colors to them? Say, for example, like this. Let me know if this is kind of what you're thinking, like a contour cut job with several different colors. If this is the case, there's several options in Flexi. So let's say I hit cut here. I've got all my different colors, and let's adjust the spacing on these so I can fit them all in one row here so we don't have to kind of look at it weird. Oops, I have to select all. There you go. So if you're looking at different colors like this, so in this case, you've got all your colors on the right side, and I'm cutting them all at once. Now, Flexi does give you the option in the options tab over here. So the first contour cut blade, or the first blade tab, I can choose to send all colors if I want to. If I uncheck this option, I can now send each color individually as their own vinyl color. So I can set jobs as now. If you look at the way we do this, this will always cut it in the same position here. I can also say I want this to be separate jobs, separate panels. So as what I want to do is separate panel, single panel, separate jobs. So if I send this as a single panel and separate jobs, what this does now is this actually maintains the position of each one of these elements, whether they're overlapping if they interact with each other, it doesn't really matter. These now will become their own cuts that will match up. So if I had these, let's say, stacked on top of each other, like kind of like an outline or something like that, now those will actually retain their position and their spacing based on where they were in the job when I had them laid out. I guess a good example of that would be, let's just take these and get rid of them. Take this and then do an outline, and we'll just keep it red and go back into here. So we can see here that when I go into this option, single panel separate jobs will maintain that position no matter where I put it. So if I put it out here, when it sends to both jobs, it's going to send the red in that same position and the black in that same position, in case you're doing like an outline type of deal. Or if you choose single panel, single job, you can do either way, or you can have the color sent individually. Again, when you send it individually, it does maintain its position. The advantage here with single panel separate jobs is that it just automatically sends like 2 jobs. Or in the other case where we had the 4 colors, it would send 4 separate jobs, and you wouldn't have to click send 4 different times for each color. But, you know, so that's just a few options that you have in there for sending colors and whatnot.
Yeah, she clarified and said that she had a job that the colors overlapped, and you covered it there. So thanks for that. Are there any other questions from you guys? Throw them in the chat here. We'll wait another minute before we close it out. If anyone has any questions for Aaron, just put them in the chat and we'll see if he can answer them. While we're waiting, I'll say that our next Flexi webinar will be on August 10th, and Aaron will be discussing some new layered printing features in Flexi 21. So you won't want to miss that one. I've just got another question from Joseph. Can we set the contour color to a custom color in Flexi?
Yeah, so and that's something that you actually, in Flexi, as long as the job is generated inside of Flexi, you can actually use whichever contour cut color you want, because the software typically understands what you're doing because it's innate into it's part of its function. So when I go to add a contour cut, I could use one of these other colors and it would be fine. And Flexi would understand that. So I've applied a contour color, and now I click on rip and print, and it recognizes that we've got a contour cut. So as long as you're creating the contour cut in Flexi, you can use whatever color you want. Typically, it's more, we've provided those colors if you're going to send the job to somebody else. Say somebody else is doing your printing for you or something like that. Those are kind of an industry standard. But if you're receiving an already ready to go file, that's why we've added that into Production Manager, because that in Production Manager, there wasn't the recognizability or the ability to see anything other than it. So if you did get a job that had a different spot color, you would have to bring it into Flexi and then modify that color. So for example, let me just say, if we separate the contour cut, if let's say this file came in as a PDF and it wasn't a contour cut color or it wasn't really recognized as a cut, you could always just grab that artwork, whether physically like this, or you could use the Find by Attributes option. You could select it and you could just tell Flexi, hey, this is a contour cut, by the way. So, and I could make anything a contour cut. So I could delete this line and I could create a second outline. Let's just create a second outline on this and make it green, apply it, and then let's just separate it so it's kind of, I can select it. So now I've selected just the outline. I can take that in Flexi and I can just make that a contour cut. Well, I don't know why it's, let's see here. Ungroup all, but I should be able to turn this into, yeah, okay, so I can make anything a contour cut. So now this is now turned into a contour cut. So any line that was existing there, I can now convert that into a contour cut that was not a contour cut before or a perf cut before. So that was something you can do in Flexi. This just gave you the ability to do it in Production Manager, because Production Manager doesn't have a drawing or any kind of ability like that. So if something did come in, this allows you to say, okay, well, it's no big deal. I don't have to contact that designer back and say, hey, you need to change the design. Then that way you don't have to deal with that whole scenario. You can just say, no big deal. That's the spot color you're using? Great. I'll just put it into my Flexi or in my Production Manager. I'll just import the job and send it along its way. Then that way it makes it a little easier on you. You don't have to specifically get a file that has that specific contour cutter, because we know that as you meet people and you talk to people who have experience with design, they're not always familiar with the industry standards of the cutting world. So that might be something you run into frequently. So,
Aaron, Yolanda had a follow-up question on the cut you just set up. She's wondering if that would cut twice on a cutter.
It will only cut once. In this particular case that I set up right here, it's only going to cut once. The outline here is just going to be printed, and then this would be cut if I make it a contour cut color. It basically just takes that color. If they didn't assign it, because Flexi has that ability to understand what's a contour cut as well. So if you import a file that has a line that's labeled as cut contour, Flexi will know that that's a contour cut. But if it's a different color, say it's like green or whatever it is, and it's not labeled specifically as cut contour, Flexi is going to treat that color as just a color to be printed, or maybe a color just to be cut if you're importing in just for cutting. So if you're in this specifically, if you're doing contour cutting, you might want to say, okay, well, he obviously designed this as a contour cut line. I just need to make sure that Flexi has the ability to recognize that as such. And so you can just grab these lines and convert them into contour cuts so that Flexi understands what's going on. And then, of course, now we've added the ability for you to assign a contour cut color in Production Manager so it can recognize that color, since it doesn't have a design interface to do that. So that's why that's there. So, but it should only cut once, unless you've overlapped it or duplicated the line more than once. But in this case, when I converted this to contour cut color, it converts it from one element to another is what it does.
All right. Thanks, Aaron, for answering those questions. That's about all the time we have for today, so we'll go ahead and close it out. Thank you all for joining us for this Flexi webinar. Make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter so you won't miss out on any webinar announcements. Don't forget to join us for our next Flexi webinar on August 10th. Thanks again for attending. We hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time.